Hey there, this is Nick Zager and Remy is Daner. We are from Mirlo Real Estate Partners, and this is the Dentelligentsia Podcast, where we interview premium dental vendors and help them make the best decisions for their businesses. Welcome, Andy. How are you?
Welcome, guys. Great. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been a while, so it's good to see you in the flesh. Why don't you tell us? You've worked in the dental industry for many years. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? Who you are, and what you do?
I guess professionally, I started in pharmaceuticals and the lab in women's health back in wow, I'm aging myself, but I got gray hair here. But back in '03, I want to say '02, and then about 2010. Big, huge layoffs in pharmaceuticals and crazy stuff was going on. And I got into dental, and I originally started with Tulsa Dental and just absolutely fell in love with the procedures and the medical aspect because we were doing endo and implants and things like that. And then I learned about the industry and the business of dentistry. I really passionate about the small business aspect. And Patterson at the time was market in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I begged my way to that team. And then shortly, it's one of those, they made you one of those offers you couldn't refuse. And I moved to Nashville, Tennessee to manage there. And, as things occur, I found myself more aligned with family business, and that now I'm here, and I've been at Nashville Dental. It's a family-owned regional distributor for the last 4 years, and we're just able to connect because we run a small business. We're able to connect with the small business dentist on a more intimate level versus a corporate level. But I guess, does that kind of fill you in on a little bit of what I've done? So for 15 years, I've done a little bit of everything, quite honestly. So.
No, that's some good background, especially us as commercial real estate brokers. I mean, it is the human side of the business that's we want to help people at the end of the day, and hearing a little bit about how you kind of got to where you are is pretty cool.
And coming from healthcare, healthcare is this 800-pound gorilla out there where medical doctors are really, are they practicing medicine, or are they fulfilling, the goals of the corporate entities they work for? And then you get to see, small business dentistry, Dr. Smith family practice that has 8 employees, that is connected to the community and delivering great health care individual families, and it just changes your whole perspective on that. So
to say that Nashville Dental's been doing this for a while is a gross understatement, right? Don't quote me on this, but
since 1905. So since 1905, it's been owned by the same family, and their goal has always been, and the mission, and they live by it. It's to grow, sustain healthy dental practices, and so that has been their mantra since Vernon Brown started with the company. And oh gosh, I want to say 1921, I believe. Yeah. And he was a delivery boy, believe it or not, on a little trike. And then you come, full circle, and they're in the 4th generation now in the Nashville market, in Kentucky, Tennessee, West Virginia, Ohio, Alabama, with so yeah, amazing.
It's a great story, and I recommend anybody jump on your website and read about it, because it's neat. And again, you've been doing this a long time. Talk to us about how you're servicing the dental community, and how you've grown into how many 10 states or so?
Right. 8 to 10. We're now in 9 states. We're in 9 states. We do. So it used to be not even that long ago, guys. Years ago, if you had cotton rolls and gloves and you put them in a box and you could get that to the customer the next day, well, that was a big check mark. And that was what everybody, that has evolved into today's business where it's, you can get your cotton rolls. I don't know if you guys have heard of a company called Amazon. They do a good job about getting something from a warehouse to an end user. So that's not that big of a deal anymore. That's kind of the standard. You have to do that to be in business. So there's that piece of it. So how do you differentiate yourself? And the way that we do that is like by working with the dentists and getting intimate and kind of diving into their business. Like, what are you struggling with? Are you struggling with your finances? Are you struggling with staffing? Are you struggling with your marketing? And talking to you guys, your lease, when's your lease coming up? Are you in the best space? Mid-career, should you look at leasing versus a purchasing option where you can leave sort of a legacy to your family? Things like that. That's the next level of what we do. And if you're failing your customer, if you're just getting their cotton rolls to them, that's really not what we do. We really look at it from a small business and a partnership program.
Well, talk to us. I mean, obviously, you've worked, it sounds like, with hundreds and hundreds of dentists over the years, and probably from startups, mid-career, and also dentists who are thinking about transitioning into retirement. Tell us some success stories.
Well,
where your involvement made a significant impact that you can be proud of.
Most recently, I think what it is involved in the purchasing of either an existing dental practice or a startup. And a lot of these, they do a great job about teaching them about this is how you do a crown. This is an MOD. This is a two surface. They do a great job about that, but they really don't spend very much time on, well, how do you save appropriately? Come out of school, dental with, 6-figure debt, but that does not prohibit you from starting your small business. And a lot of dentists don't know that. And so we've developed a thing called Dental Strategic that helps them in their business planning aspect. So it's no different. You just have to know how the underwriters look at your business, and you just have to show them cash flow and things like that. And DSO is not a bad word. It's not a 4-letter word. It's a 3-letter acronym, right? But it's not a 4-letter bad word for our industry. I mean, sometimes a new dentist will have to go out and do some corporate dentistry for a little while, cut on teeth, figure out what they're good at, figure out what they like about that's a dentistry and what they don't like. And so that's a good thing. I think it's a healthy thing for not only the dental DSO business, but also for our business too. And then we're able to sort of take that production and hand it over and put a business plan with that and work directly. You got your distributor, you've got your Nashville Dental, you've got your bank, you've got your general contractor, you've got your commercial real estate professional. And then that way you're able to work as a team to deliver the end result that the doctor will benefit from. The most recent one, you asked me about the most recent one. So we had an example of a doctor that came out and she just went out and did hey, read it, see where I'm at, blah, blah, blah. And she got about $600,000. Well, $600,000 today, guys, is it's not going to get you a camper in Tennessee. You're going to have like one chair, or half a chair. You're going to have half a chair and a flashlight. So it was really good to pull her in and work as a team.
Well, thank God. Before you keep going. Yeah. Thank God we're not in Nashville.
Right? Yeah. I mean, it's a beautiful place, but man, has it just gotten out of control? Some of the expenses around here now to build out, but we were able to get her. She found a practice, and we were able to get her $1.2 million. Now, cash flow. Now, a lot of people would say, well, no, everything cash flow. So starting day one, she goes from, hey, I'm going to have to struggle and get a $650,000 startup, or I'm able to cash flow. And guess what? The real estate's part of it. So she was able to not only buy the practice, but also the building that goes with it, the condo that goes with it. So right there in and of itself, if she had not pulled us in, if she hadn't have sent me that text, she'd probably be struggling today to go out and find new patients. And here she is doing a life-changing service for her community. So it's cool. It's cool to help people do that. So
is Dental Strategic a program path to starting up exclusively, or is it also you apply? Can an existing practice owner use it for optimization and
for sure, for both? It's really it's Remy. It's startups are kind of where I am at a lot just from my role at Nashville Dental as a sales manager and how I work with the reps. And a lot of the young people, a lot of they're moving here. I do a lot of that. Tenured guys, I don't really need to help out as much. They've got the communication and relationship. And so mid-level, midstream, we're sort of looking at like, hey, like I mentioned before, is it an extension? Is it an expansion of the existing practice, or maybe a relocation in that midstream? The one that I feel like we always, and it's almost like I feel like I'm beating a dead horse all the time about talking to dentists about their business and the end of their career. They always talk to you too late. It's always too late to help. And last 3 years is the most significant. That's where you're getting most of your evaluation of the practice. And a lot of dentists sort of lose the passion for their practice in those last 3 years. And just like anything in life, if you don't love what you're doing, it's really hard to put your best effort forward. And that's the most important time. And they usually get, they'll talk to us about 18 months or 12 months before. And, we have to have a hard discussion with them and say, hey, you really do need to think about your end date. I know you had your end date in mind, but as we pull the numbers, this probably wasn't your best effort, right? Admittedly. And, it ends up pushing it another 2 to 3 years out.
It's really interesting. I mean, we've done, to take a step back, we probably interviewed 8 or 9 people so far for these podcasts, and we thought we knew a lot about the dental industry. But as we talk to people like you that have lived in this world, we're hearing so many new stories and so many interesting things. What I would say is some of the consistent with almost every single person we interview, it's about timing and it's about communication. Those are like some of the consistent themes that we hear about, because it doesn't matter if you're, starting your career, mid-career, or late career. You have a team of experts, or you have access. You should have access to a team of experts around you that hopefully you can lean on to get expert guidance, because these are major, major kind of, forks in the road where you make the right choice, things get better. You make the wrong choice, things can get worse.
For sure. And I think in small businesses, everybody seems to always want their pound of flesh from that small business. And I think the dental owner, the small proprietor, always feels like there's somebody that's either sending them a mailer or an email or being introduced to them. And hey, for the small price of $30,000, I'll fix this, or for just $28,000, I'll do this for you. And it does seem overwhelming. And I've seen it firsthand. And a subscription fee. So these guys can pay $1,800 to $4,000 a month in just subscription fees. It's amazing. You think Netflix is getting us? You should see some of these support fees for these guys just for imaging and things like that. But they do have to start to trust somebody. And I think that's the biggest thing is I find myself consistently having to say, hey, look, I know you may have been stung somewhere along your career, but you can't hold your poker cards up and go like, hey, I need some help. I've got no idea what you need help with. And we spend a lot of time trying to figure out what the pain is or what the purpose is to help this individual get where they need to get. And I always start out by telling them, I'm not going to be successful unless you're successful. So, that whole thing, that fiduciary sort of ship is, if I sell you one thing and then I only get a fish for the day. I want to be able to fish for the rest of my career. I need you to be healthy for yourself, but for us to run a health, if our business is not healthy, I can't help you. So it is symbiotic in every way. You're right.
Let's go back and talk a little bit about startups. Remy and I are partial to startups. We did some envisioning ourselves, and it seemed like our favorite client that we like to work with is a dental startup, whether it's general dentistry or a specialty. And a lot of times it's because those, they share the same worldview with us, or they're in the same part of life, or they have a couple young children, and but they're entrepreneurs at heart, and we want to help them through that process the best we can. What are some red flags that new dentists, that they come across when they're trying to go through that startup process, or they're trying to go through it the wrong way? What do you see?
So the first thing I say, it's always funny. It's my favorite thing too, guys. I love seeing it. Number one, I love young people. I love watching them come out. They have like this whole idea of what future is going to be like and what their career is going to be like. And I just kind of smile and go, it's not going to be. You're going to be close, but it's not what but it is work, right? It is work. And I think they sometimes are like, wow, I didn't think about that. The first thing I say, and when I get in front of the dental students in the classrooms and things like that, we get invited in often, is everybody here that hates the car they're driving, and you're going to buy a car, like the first paycheck you get, like you get your first job and your first paycheck is going to go to that new Acura. Do not do that. Like if you ever want to own a practice or to be financed for a practice, the very worst thing you can do is go buy that new $85,000 car. And the last time I did this just at UT it was about 3 or 4 months ago, there were two girls up front and they just started laughing. And they go like, not only did you like peg what we were going to do, but we both were looking at this Acura, and they were going to do it. And I was like, do not do that. Just wait, drive that Honda that your dad got you, and drive it for a little bit. But that's the worst thing I see. And it's sad because a home is not the same. A home does not put the same pressure on that business startup. I mean, they realize you've got to have a home. I would say, don't go get a $850,000 house and you've got a $3,800 mortgage. I mean, that's tough, but those are the two things.
You're financing in jeopardy.
Yeah. So, well, to understand this, I mean, I think we do obviously seen it. You have to put a personal guarantee on that for you don't have a business yet. So that first 2 years of your dental practice are actually Dr. Austin or Dr. Remy or Dr. Nick. It's not Reynolds. It's not that, right? It is you. And then once you establish your business, then I say, okay, now it's time to transfer over that asset to your business entity.
That's great advice.
Don't buy a car and realize that you are going to have to put your personal credit on that initial 24 months to 36 months of the business.
I'm going to add, don't buy a nice car and don't get divorced.
Yeah.
That's at least not doing that.
So you guys have seen it too. I've seen everything. Yeah. 100%.
Too many times. Yep. And that's silly. Yep. But if you can help it, it's tongue in cheek, but seriously, don't get divorced.
That's right.
Not during that.
It doesn't make it impossible. It just add 3 years. Just add just add 3 or 4 more years to everything. So
you nailed it. You nailed it.
So how are you helping dentists develop a clear roadmap to ensure that they are set up for long-term success when they're in that process?
One of the, I guess, most fun things that I do is I try to get smaller groups that are more intimate and get them together. We just had 15, 16 D3s and D4s come to Nashville over the weekend, and we had sort of a class, and we taught them how to read a P&L. They have no idea about a lot of doctors will get sideways. They'll just get bent sideways about a really high supply bill. Well, a supply bill is not in and of itself, a high supply bill is not a bad thing. If producing, if you had a $100,000 month, well, you're going to have a $6,000 supply bill to meet the needs of that $100,000 month. You just got to know what percentages, hey, you really love that building. I'll stay in we'll stay in that world. You really love this spot. Well, 35% of your overhead cannot go to your lease, to your rent. You won't be profitable. You got to find a space that's going to give you that, that 12 to 17% of your overhead. You get a little, you can either create nor destroy matter. And so there's only X amount of production collection that's going to allow you to pay your bills. And that's kind of our role to set and say, hey, don't get so about your dollar amount. Just think of it in the percentage of what you're doing. Did it fit that month?
So what are the what are the right ratios they should be thinking about? As far, you said for rent it's between 12 and 17. What about staffing costs?
Staff is somewhere between 22 and 28. Got to be, one of my anecdotal stories that I always tell is, one of the doctors, gosh, I met probably 7-8 years ago in Nashville, was like the number one city in America for new people moving here. It was like some crazy number, like 90 people a day. It was insane. and the doctor's like, man, I just can't grow my practice. Blah, blah. And we sat down and we started looking at stuff. And I said, well, what's your marketing like? And we pulled sort of a version of his P&L. It was almost like receipts. It wasn't a P&L. I was like, number one, you've got to get a P&L. So looking at it, I go, well, from what I'm seeing, you only spent, you've got $1 million practice, but you only spent like $1,800 last year on marketing. I do this sign for the baseball team and I do this. I've always put this yellow pages. And I said, well, look, number one, nobody, great that you're supporting the baseball team, no goes to the yellow pages anymore. It's this thing right here. It's this, that's what you have to be. People make their decisions based on that. And the other thing you need to realize, you've got a $1 million practice. You should be spending somewhere around 3%, somewhere around 2 to 3.5%. So $20,000 to $35,000 a year of $1 million practice should be spent on marketing and advertising. If you want to grow a healthy practice, well, you spent $1,800. And I said, well, there's your problem. Your number one fastest growing city in America, and nobody knows you exist.
That's a great point and a great metric. And we deal with that in the rent to revenue ratio example that you gave before. By no means should anybody be overpaying in a category. I mean, that's stating the obvious. But underpaying, if you look at underpaying and thinking that you're saving money or that's a good thing, it usually isn't, right? I mean, it's usually an indication of a different problem altogether.
It's not right. A start's going to spend over that 3.5, right? Because they're starting up. So they're going to be in that sort of 8% range for 18 months to 24 months. And then after you start building your practice, then I would say, hey, start dialing that back and having a plan for right sizing that expense. You got to put it into other places.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because our business, any business, people move away. There's some churn. It's not as though you're just always constantly building up. So you always have to be kind of growing. Are there any, outside of like online presence and reputation management, or what are the best ways for a new dentist to approach some of that marketing? Is it ground marketing or?
Well, I will say like the old is new again, sort of the old is new again piece. And I do believe that while I just held up the cell phone and I said, hey, this is how you market today. I do believe that there is some genuine artifact to someone going out and introducing themselves, whether it be in the schools or a business that's located near you. And there's two things that I tell that will help you with. You get your name out there. You're not going to be cutting on teeth all day long. There's going to be some spaces in your first year. So what are you going to do with that time? You can either go do something non-productive, or you can go do that. If you gain one patient, if you do one patient a week, that's worth those extra 3 to 5 hours that you had that were blank in your schedule. The other thing, it's hard to go and put yourself out there. It's a little nerve-wracking. It can give you the butterflies in your stomach, but go do that and it will make them a better clinician. They'll present better treatment plans. They'll find themselves opening up, because that's what it really is. It's is as much a business as a clinical portion. I mean, like, there's clinical aspect to it, but there's also this personal connection, because you're not going to die because number 9 got pulled, right? But it will affect you have to connect with people and say, hey, your smile is the gateway to how people perceive you. I've got to get that fixed. I can't do it for free. We've got to find a solution that helps you feel great about yourself. And that's what, I mean, it's a little bit of plastic surgery. It's a little bit like plastic surgery, but it's a little bit like clinician, but it's also like a cell. Like, what a cool industry to go in. I'm too old to go back and do the dentistry thing, but man, what a cool profession to be able to deliver that to your patient.
Do you engage in any business planning or just kind of helping on some of that foundational aspects when you're working with a startup dentist?
So what I found is, if you start doing that a little bit, you'll get pulled into it, and that's not a revenue stream for me personally. What I found out is there's smarter people in that piece. Well, while I can go like, aha, that's your issue. I'm probably not the best person to hold your hand through this process, but I do know this individual that does this professionally. Like you have a legal issue. Well, I know a great attorney and she's the one that you need to talk to. Or, hey, it sounds like to me, you're not capitalizing all the tax incentives appropriately to this person. And I value reputation on being able to connect that dentist with the best professional that they can. And I always do too. I always tell them like, hey, you don't need to go out and Google 35 people that are in that piece and spend 100 hours. I've already done that work for you. I've got 2 of the best individuals in this area that can help you with this issue. You want to get a dentist fired up, bring up dental benefits and PPO contracts. One is I found 2 of the best companies in the country that do very different. They have very different platforms. Hey, if you value this, this is the company you should use. If you value this, this is the company you should use. But you should talk to both of them, doctor, and decide which one best fits your business. And it turns something that's 30 minutes that could have been months worth of discovery. And I connected them to 2 great people. And too many good stories to tell, Nick, about that. I mean, that really is PPOs. That's what you get paid for the work that you do. So a bad contract that you signed when you were 27 years old and you just got out of school can follow you until you're 45 years old and they're struggling. And I'm like, well, no wonder you're struggling. You're getting the lowest reimbursement rate for a crown in the state of Tennessee. I mean,
Andy,
Wow.
I mean, it is fascinating. And Nick and I certainly have seen doctors get fired up at the topic for good reason. And I'll tell you, we've been at a few dental CE events where the presenter is, presenting on insurance.
right.
And you'd think that the topic would put everybody to sleep because it's so boring. But it is, I would say, it's the most interactive presentation topic of all that we've, attended because for a number of reasons. But it affects their world so much, and and the consequence of not having what you need is scary.
Sure.
And that's often where the conversations end up.
Well, a lot. So that's third thing that I'll always tell them is don't let credential yourself. Don't don't go to YouTube University and credential yourself. And then I go like, hey, it's okay to be a little timid when you are hired by this that whether it's a DSO or whether you're an associate, and you're basically handing over your future earnings to someone that's going to credential you. To me, with the law, this is a horrible. I wouldn't want a really good attorney. I would want a professional, like a defense attorney, not like the guy I go to church with or my brother-in-law. I wouldn't want unless my brother-in-law was Shapiro or something. But like, you want a professional. That's what I always tell them. Like, it's worth your time to make sure that new company you're starting with, before you sign on the dotted line to credential you and start that contract. Because if you start your contract down here, you might get incremental raises to that contract over time, but you started down here. You really should have probably started like right here. And then you get your income. I mean, like, that's a big, that's a big space, and sometimes you can't. That was, I love to talk about the good stuff, but some of the bad stuff is I just had to tell somebody just recently, hey, it really is because you signed that Delta Dental contract for a crown so low 11 or 12 years ago. I don't know what to tell. Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
We deal with that. That's the landlord in our world, right? You have a doctor, a dentist coming up for renewal, and the landlord says you don't need don't complicate things and get a broker involved. And it is, to use your example, it is like you getting accused of committing a crime, and the district attorney says, just trust me, you don't need an attorney.
We're going to take care of you.
It's a hard no every time.
Oh, yeah.
And it's right. It's not always easy. And sometimes it's unavoidable. But, to the extent that you have a choice in the matter, take it every time.
Yeah. Well, it was, example here in Tennessee, had a renewal come up. It was a 7-year initial. They got a 5-year extension. But at the 5-year extension, unbeknownst to the tenant, the landlord installed a secondary water meter and it was hidden. I mean, it was, I had to go 11 pages deep to find this like one little line, you'll pay your separate water meter. And they couldn't figure out why their rent had gone up $2,000 per month. Well, it was a separate water meter that they had put on the practice. And then we're caught. There's 3 years left in the term. I won't get into that horrible extension term, kind of that. But they could buy a dry vac, or they could use the same wet ring vac that they were using. And basically they're at an impasse. They're just going to have to pay the $2,000 a month until they get to the end of that term. And so we're just waiting to get them into a space 2 years from now. We're going to have to wait another year before we start looking, essentially. And I just was like, man, I wish I had better news for you, but.
That's a good segue. I mean, when you're working with a client, what are the most important factors to consider when you're talking about picking a location for their practice as real estate?
I do think around here, this is Nashville proper. Parking has become just horrible. Like, is it easy to get to your practice? It's less important to have road frontage. It used to be very, very important. I don't think it's as important today, but parking, and is it easy to get to your practice? I think that's the number one thing. And then secondly, who's your neighbor? I think that's also, if you're trying to have this, I'm going to deliver excellent service to you. You probably shouldn't have local smoke vapes be your neighbor, right? It's probably not the type of foot forward that you want. And so there's that mix between professional and access that we look for. And and we get to know who, and we use services also, not just our local knowledge, but we use services to find out how many dentists are in that area. And are you going into an area, if everybody wants to go, I can pick on Franklin, Tennessee. Everyone wants to go to Franklin, Tennessee. Franklin, Tennessee needs another general dentist like I need a hole in the head. There's the competition level there. I mean, it has gotten, you want to always see that 2,000, you want to always see about 2,000 to 5,000 available residents. I mean, they're down to like 1,200. Like I basically tell them, if you set up in Franklin, you better capture that whole neighborhood that's behind you. Like, everybody there better be coming to your, they have to go through your driveway to get to the dentist. But
I imagine even looking at a demographic report, in Michigan or the Metro Detroit area, I mean, we're flat. You can go and pull from 4 different directions likely. Whereas maybe when you're in an area where there's some mountains or some hills and whatnot, I mean, it's like you can't pull from everywhere in the same way. I mean, the traffic only goes in certain directions,
Lots of rivers, lots of around here. It's very different. It's difficult. You would think it is more difficult demographically than you can imagine it to be, and that choice is important because you're probably going to live with that choice anywhere from 7 to 10 years or more. So it's not something that you should take lightly.
Yeah, I mean, it's so expensive these days to build something out. I mean, a lot of we want to set them up for the next 15 to 20 years, just because it's almost cost prohibitive to pick up and move again.
Banks are doing a better job. So for the first, and this is, I guess I got into the business in 2010 ish, and from my understanding, I've been told from like 2000 until 2000, like 16, 17, a startup sort of product was about $450 to $500,000. Well, that can't get you. I mean, that can maybe get your door and your mechanic, but like you're going to be doing dentistry in this chair. It's not going to get you there anymore. So they took it up to about 650 from 17 until about 20. And now they're willing to look at like a good opportunity on a good dentist that has business plan, that has some production numbers, under their belt, whether it be from a corporate standpoint or from an associateship standpoint. We're able to get into that $750, $850 million range if it is the right opportunity, and that is in the last four years. So for 20 years, it's $450 and $450,000, and in the last 8 years, it's doubled or tripled.
No question. We've seen, I think it's safe to say, in the last year and a half, more startup dentists being able to purchase their real estate as well. And it's still uncommon, but where a year and a half or more ago, that just wasn't there was no path.
Right.
And now if the circumstances are right and they line up, we're seeing more of that.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. The banks they do evolve and they have provided, they're continuing to be competitive and provide more opportunities. So
still to this day, for a bank, dentistry is still the safest bet. There's a 97 plus success rate. If DDS or comma DMD is behind your name, you've got about a 97, 98% chance to be successful in your career. Embezzlement out, take like drug use or something like that, take a criminality act out of it, then you're 100% going to be successful. And
our job, what we do is all data driven, right? And sometimes we need to put the cheerleader hat on, though, and that's one of the most fun statistics to share in that role, because it's true. I mean, if I don't gamble, but if I walked into a casino and was told that I had a 97% plus chance of winning anything, I'd be.
The sad part to me is that I tell any of my clients, it's like, if I was personally going to buy that building, my rate would be, and I have good, really strong credit and have some money and have a nice business, but my rate is probably 2 points higher than yours,
Right. Yeah.
And that's for me to buy the same building that you would buy. And so that's it's pretty crazy. I mean, it actually, really says something. I don't know. Where do we want to go with this? So you want to talk about some of the best advice that you can give, or that you even, or
in my personal life, and I try to do this. So my personal life, I played football in college, and my most favorite coach, Coach Hudson, said something to me one time, and he goes, here's, because I asked him, I was like, because I was a little undersized, and I said, well, why'd you put me in that position? He goes, well, here's why. Have to put somebody there, but I knew, and they were going to make a mistake. It didn't matter who I put there. You were going to make a mistake. This other person was going to make a mistake, but I knew you were going to do it at full speed. And that's what I always tell like these young dentists is like, hey, don't be afraid to do something daring and to go out there and put yourself out there, but do it do it with all your heart. Like do it with everything in it. Because I think in football, the guys that get hurt are the ones that actually, believe it or not, are the ones that are kind of pulling back. The ones that don't get hurt are the ones that are just flying around like crazy. You're like, how did he not get hurt? But it's 100%. It's the 80%er. 80% effort is the one that usually struggles. And I see that in business a lot. They're very tempted. Oh, well, I think I can do that because that's too much money or that's too risky. And I go like, again, 98% success rate. I'm telling you, the ADA is telling you, you need to spend, 28%, 26% on, we argue all the time. I'll pick on myself. I won't pick on staff. Everybody, some podcaster will come and say, well, you should have 3.5 or 4% of supplies to your collection and production. I will tell you that is the risk. Like in my personal life, I don't walk around my house and tell my kids and my wife, like, hey, cut that light switch off. Cut that. I mean, like, of course we all go around, we're dads, right? We go around and we cut the light switch off, but it's not freaking me out. I'm not putting up signs. I'm not taking my family to a retreat to teach them how not to run the water while they're brushing their teeth or cut the lights off when they leave a room, because it's like 3% of my life. So I'm going to spend 3% of my time on it. The people that struggle spend like 70% of their time fussing at their kids over leaving a light on. It's a freaking light. So your supply bill is 5 to 6% of your business. Spend 5 to 6% of your business, but engage that person that you're seeing every 2 weeks because they see 100 other offices. Hey.
I think what you're getting at is really, it's better to invest in yourself, better to invest in getting better or seeing more patients or making sure your chairs are full than worrying about trying to trim, $300, $400 a month.
That's right. What's $300 savings really going to do for you? It's really not going to do that much for you, but it alienates somebody that could be a great teammate from your team. Like, I'm not having to pay benefits for my guys. I use guys, guys, girls, but for my sales team, they're not paying 401k for them. They're not paying, they're not PTOing them. They're not they don't have to give them sick leave, but it really is an unpaid asset to go and say, hey, you get to look at a lot of stuff. What am I doing wrong? Or what am I doing right? Sometimes I will tell you, it's a lot of fun to go to lunch with a doctor and tell them you're doing everything right. Everybody thinks that every time I have this meeting with them, that I'm going to find this like aha moment and I'm going to save them like $100,000 or they're going to do this or do that. And man, I think the last 4 or 5 times I've literally gone and said, yeah, I don't know if I'd change anything. I won't use I will use very general numbers. But hey, you did $1.4 million last year in production. You're running at like 36% over of profit to you. So you made like $450,000 last year. Like, I'll take that. Don't go to Egypt every year. I don't know. Don't climb Mount Kilimanjaro, but
we climb it once. You got to go once. But
that's right. You got to go once. But a $500,000 living for a small business is a pretty darn good living.
It is.
And I'll tell you, they've changed. Like, it's evolving. I think dentists today are they're like, hey, I'll bring on an associate earlier than historic would have them do. Have a second location. Like, I think that's big. Everybody's like DSO. Well, I think there's these dentists. They're like, hey, I'm pretty good at this. I'll have 2 to 3 locations, and I'll make 15% off the second and third locations, and really just sort of be the guiding principle there. I'll do my own. I've got my own 35% overhead that I'm getting, and there you've got a $900,000 W-2 lifestyle.
Plus, you could own the real estate.
At that part, you're cash flowing better than you've ever cash flowed, and now you're building something. and everybody thinks like, hey, you're going to flip it. And I've talked to a dozen or more in the last 3 years, and they're like, why would I flip this? I'm making I'm working 4 days a week. I'm having a great life. I'm making 7 figures, and I'm able to help out associates that are coming on. I'm able to mentor them. Well, what a good living! I mean, that.
Yeah, the idea that you can have a profit center and a lifestyle business strategy are not mutually exclusive. To your point exactly, you can have it all, and that's pretty good.
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
Yeah, I think they sometimes. I think sometimes by general generally they go in, they find something wrong with a tooth, then they go fix it, and you're in pain. You leave out of pain, all the time. I know everybody's gonna be like, yeah, I'll leave the dentist. I've got some pain, but generally speaking, they find a problem and they fix it. And I think sometimes they get sort of preoccupied in their business with always trying to find a problem where one doesn't exist. Some years are more successful, and I think we're coming up on this could prove itself to be a tough. Before has been tough throughout the dental industry. We're still doing startups though. We're still doing business. I will say, in 2008, we had just come out of a pretty good one. We were still dealing with it in 2010. A little bit. And then we had another one, I guess, when guys 14, 15, I think, when doctors sort of put the ones that invest in their business in the kind of tough times, or the ones that slingshot out when it gets a little better. The ones that sort of sit on their hands and go like, I'm not doing anything this year, I think are the ones that are going to struggle. 2024 and 2025, I think this is a great time to invest in your small business. They will be the ones that in 26, 27, and 28 are going to just be so wildly successful. They just won't believe it. The ones in 3 years from now that are going to struggle a little bit are the ones that kind of said, hey, I'm not going to invest in myself. I'm going to make the donuts. I'm just going to go do the normal everyday thing, and always have to be evolving. You're going to have to evolve at some time. So that's kind of my advice. It makes me sound salesy at some point, but
no, that's great advice, not just for dentists, but I think for all of us.
Yeah.
Right? In investing in ourselves, even though things might be more challenging than they were, so that those subsequent years are or later years, will slingshot us forward, as you put it.
Right.
So
agreed.
Yeah,
agreed.
You gotta keep growing. You gotta keep improving and getting better. Otherwise you're getting worse by just standing still. What trends are you seeing in the dental industry as somebody who's like on the front lines that some new dentists or younger dentists should be aware of as they launch their new practices?
Well, I think I mentioned it a little bit before, but I kind of hit it on it. I do see this new sort of multi-location thing being that there's, we always, historically, it was always you had a startup, and then through your first 10 years, you did your startup, and then you either, like I said before, you either expanded or you relocated. Maybe you bought your own condo or a freestanding space for the super successful people. And then, at year 25, you sold your practice, period, sort of beginning, middle, end. I think there's this new little thing at about like year 5, 6. I think these young people they kind of have a little bit more entrepreneurial spirit than I've ever seen before. And they'll go like, ooh, I got a buddy. And these two dentists will sort of go in together and do business. And then they'll have like 2, 3, 4 locations. And then they'll pull in new dentists without any intention of ever not to a Heartland or to another larger entity. Their whole aspiration is just to have these 4 locations in their entirety for the length of their career. And they start like you said, and then they start having the cash flow to do the things with, like buy real estate and expand that way. Man, I just think that is, and I've seen it the last maybe 18 months to 24 months. I've seen that more as an actual business opportunity. I think I knew like two or three individuals that were doing that over the last like 10 years. And now I hear it more and more. And I've been telling dentists to do that. Like, hey, we can find you an associate. You just have to be a little bit of a mentor. And in exchange for being a mentor, you get to take a percentage of their production, novel idea. And I think it really has become neat. And I'm interested to see where that will go over the next 5 years.
So are we. And we hope you're right, because we'll be there to help them with their growth
For sure.
along the way.
But I think there's that piece of it. There's the demographic that says, women dentists, there'll be more women dentists in the next 3 years. I see that a little bit. I think it's at that 50-50. And I think it might hold true to that. And I think that multi-location presents more opportunities for doctors to not have, where they can sort of work in this location and then have sort of backup within that entity, so that they can maintain, you can take a maternity leave, you can be a mom, you can be a dad, and have that work-life balance that they've never had before. I think some of these dentists that we know that are, well, you guys, I'm older than you guys, but that are in their 50s, I think they have busted their tail. I mean, a lot of those individuals have really worked their tail off. And while they have a great business to show for it, man, they worked from 7 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock at night, 4.5 days a week. And they're tired. I think this new thing that I just mentioned allows you to never miss a soccer game, never miss a cheerleading, never miss a cheerleading event, to be at home and to experience things. And that's, doesn't get any better than that.
Speaking of getting, sounds like you're talking a little bit our language about family and community. If you could go back in time and talk to your 28-year-old self, is there anything that you would tell them?
I would have said, no, don't take that pharmaceutical job, because that was So my different podcast. More in the stock market there than I care to even talk about. So that would have been the number one, Nick, that I would have told him. But I would have, the dentistry industry is a wonderful place to be in. I would have probably, I'd have done better in my undergrad studies, and I wish I would have gone and been a dentist. I would have loved it. I might not have been the best tooth fixer, but I would have run a really good business.
Your hands might have been too big to get in anyone's mouth.
Yeah, well, hey, I don't know. You should see some of these guys. They have some gigantic hands. But
my wife keeps telling me that she wishes that would have been mine. That's her wish for me.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but yeah, there's that. Now, I always think that I know, Nick, you and I have talked about this before, but at the end of the day, and this is like oversimplistic, nobody's going to care how successful you were as a business person. They're really only going to care, were you a good spouse? Were you a good father? Were you a good friend? Are the things that really are important in life. And we have the pleasure to work in an industry that allows us to manage all of that. Successful, be good stewards of the things that we are afforded. That's all we ever really want, right? And to be able to work with good people in general is fantastic. And that's the dental industry to me in a nutshell.
That's really cool. We are starting a tradition over here where the guest from our last podcast asked a question for the next person in line to answer. I don't know how. This one is kind of interesting because they talked about that almost every dental vendor has to deal with these days is construction. Construction, where we're dealing with, where are the materials, dealing with getting permits from municipalities. We're dealing all these timelines, which are really important to our clients, to get into sequence so that they can, make this stuff happen. This has been a big issue that seems to be brewing and getting worse and worse and worse and worse. From your vantage point, are you seeing anything changing within the dental construction zone?
Yeah, it has. And I would say very similar to the way I kind of mentioned before. For us, that dentist owner has to really put some faith in their equipment specialist, their account representative, that distribution person. Spend an inordinate amount of time. I should probably track it and see how many hours that we spend talking to new general contractors, just making sure and that what we're getting from our current general contractor is in line with the rest of the market. The danger is that when you go to something new, it's an unknown entity, and it can affect timelines. So you're always balancing, is it cost effective, or you always pay for what you get, right? Is it cost effective, or is it time effective? Well, time is money, right? On the one hand. So you do have to always, though, continue to listen and to integrate and interview new players in that field. It not only has opportunities to improve the quality of the work and the price, you got to have competition, but it also checks your current partner. And so, and they know that. I mean, they know that I talk to 4 or 5 new GCs a quarter, and they're wanting business just like everybody else. But I'm like, have you run med gas? Do you understand what's involved with permitting and running that? And the new, not ADA, not, the American Disabilities Association, that part, not the Dentist Association, but the ADA, that is just an incredible amount of hoops that you have to go through to make sure that you're hitting all the criteria for the Disabilities Act. So,
yeah, I mean, I think that, you interview 100 contractors and maybe they don't understand the difference between, the different levels, of what are required when you're even dealing with med gas. And so their initial budgets may be way off, and so
yeah. A horror story for our industry, I will not name names, is great general contractor. General contractor did a great job, but that they forgot to find out if place that they did the build out, this is on ribbon cutting day, been zoned for medical dental use. the dentist had to sit with a finished office for almost 90 days while that was cleared up to be able to have a dental office in that space. And
they're fortunate that it was cleared up at all.
Oh, and listen, luckily, fortunately, it did get cleared up. But I would say, how much did that? I mean, okay, you saved $50 a square foot. There's a number to that. I don't know the exact number, but man, that did cost a lot to sit for 90 days too. So, and just think about what that did to their digestive system during that time, I would imagine. So, but you do have to be very careful, and we do. And it's not hundreds. It's a dozen or more players a year that want to come into this and get into there, because it is. I mean, they see we're at $250 a square foot on build out now in Nashville. That's for tenant. That's for lease improvement. Now, you're getting into the 350, 450 range if it's freestanding building in Nashville. So that's why also one of the things we didn't discuss is rural versus urban. That's another podcast. We are trying to push people rurally. Tagline is a joke almost. It's like, hey, go work practice an hour and a half, an hour away from Nashville and buy a helicopter and fly back in, because you'll be able to do that. I mean, you should see some of these practices, as how successful they are. So,
yeah, no, we see it even, in Michigan, we go to some of the CE events, and there's certainly a need, and you can kind of see which counties, there's more than enough dentists, but there's certain areas where there's there's certainly a need, and potentially, as some of these dentists that are at the later stages of their career, as they start to retire, there's going to be a dearth of dentists
Right.
in some of these areas. And so that's an interesting thing to say. So as I had mentioned, do you have a question that we can ask our next guest? Is there anything specific that you'd like to hear?
I'm interested. I would love to hear where the next guest thinks, and this is selfish, dental distribution. Like, where do they see? From my perspective, but where do they see dental distribution as, with the Pattersons and the Henry Shines and the Nashville Dentals and the Bencos of this world? Do they see there's these new things coming out, Method, Torch, that shop? It's sort of like Trivago for dental supplies. Not a fan. I will say not a fan, but I see where they kind of see our business 5 years out. Would be kind of neat.
Well, we'll be sure to ask them. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here with us, spending your time and giving us some really valuable insights. And I guess we will call it a day. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys. It's great seeing you both again. Thank you, guys.
Likewise.